The Blue Earth County Board of Commissioners meeting is in session. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, agenda review.
Mr. Chair, there's only one minor change to the agenda this morning. At 9:15 we had the deed contract. Jesse Beyer is unable to be with us this morning, so I'll be presenting that as an administrative item.
Think you can handle that?
I'll try my best.
I'll move the agenda with changes.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Pass. Okay. Commissioners' reports on committees. Who wants to start this morning?
I will. Mine's relatively short.
All right.
Okay. On the 4th, we had department heads. On the 5th, I had Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund committee meeting at PDS Regional Library System. Working on some more sub-grants. We continues to be a good program. Small libraries use these for programming. We use them significantly. One of the things that Blue Earth County has done that we're real excited about that was we've reached out to our senior citizens homes, our assisted livings and stuff like that, and have had programming there that's funded by this committee. So enjoy being part of that. Then we had the later on that afternoon we had the SWCD meeting, monthly meeting. Nothing real exciting other than I think later on in the agenda we'll be looking at one of their requests. Then on the 9th I had transit discussion at Vine. Bob and I and Phil were there to represent the county, talking about rural transportation, transit in the several county area. I think that's a good discussion to have. And later that afternoon, I had a meeting with the head of the Nobles County Rural Electric Association in Worthington. I met with the folks down there talking about legislation regarding wind farms and solar farms that Rural Minnesota Energy Board has been asked to sponsor a bill presented by in that area. We wanted to know what the rural electric co-ops had their thoughts on that. I'll be meeting with the Benko rep next week. Then on the 11th, Pat McDermott and I met with the city administrator from Amboy and the chief of police down there, talk about a few things regarding the county attorney's office and the organization of their new Tri-City police department down there.
Oh my goodness.
Then we, that afternoon, Vance and I were at the community farm meeting. We brought all the potential partners together for that and talked about plans for this year's growing season. And then on the 12th, we had Marison Clerks over in Lake Crystal. Jonathan Zurich was the presenter. Gave a very nice presentation. And then yesterday I had a meeting with one of my constituents out in Lincoln Township, talked about drainage issues on County Ditch 28. So that brings me up to today.
All right. Drew?
Sure. Of course, we were all at our last board meeting on February 3rd and had a nice luncheon at Charlie's. We also had a nice photo taken of the board. Department head meeting on the 4th. Let's see here. Holy Grounds, I volunteered on the 5th. We had a Blue Earth and Nicollet County Safe Roads Coalition meeting. It's like a TZD meeting, but just locally for Blue Earth and Nicollet County. And that was a good meeting to set up some goals for the year and some planning. And then the board chair, Vance, and myself met with Brian O'Shea, coordinator with Synergetic Endeavors. And he's an advocate for the Coalition Against Bigger Trucks. on our roads, and so he educated us a little bit on it. We already knew quite a bit. I know Vance knew quite a lot on that, and we talked about the fact that there are some people interested in wanting heavier and bigger trucks on the roads, over 80,000 pounds, and that's 40 tons. And so there's many associations, you know, the Minnesota County Associations, the Sheriff's Association, Minnesota Police Association, the list goes on and on and on, who are against raising the 80,000 pound limit on our roads. And so we talked quite a bit about that, but I'm sure the thing you wanted to get across was that they oppose this Minnesota Senate File 30, I can't remember, 304, I think it was, which is trying to push forward a larger weight limit. February 6th, I met with a local resident about some concerns that he had about the needs of our local immigrants here in Mankato area. February 10th, I attended the annual Diversity Awards Luncheon along with Board Chair Vance Stromberg, and that was always a good meeting. It's the annual awards luncheon that they have down at the Verizon Center. Let's see, on the 10th, also Vance, Jesse Beyer, Administrator Bob Meyer, and myself met and just to discuss our preparation activities for attending the NACO Legislative Conference, which runs from the 21st of this month through the 25th out in Washington, D.C. And so along with all the workshops, speakers, and visits on the Hill with our local D.C. legislators, we try to take in what we can out there in those 4 days. There's a lot of, it's pretty much packed with activities and things to do. I know with Vance's involvement with the Rural Action Committee out there. Let's see here, I attended the MnDOT 169 public meeting. They had a couple of those. They had one in St. Peter, one here, I know, talking about the planned closure of Highway 169 between St. Peter and Mankato in the year 2016. And so we, a lot of people showed up for that. There was a good turnout. People wanting to know how that would impact, you know, the rerouting of traffic to Highway 13 off of 99. Some, of course, will go through 22, and the fact that MnDOT's going to try to do some, well, not try to, they've got planned road safety improvements for 22 and for Highway 13 this year in preparation for that closure next year. They're still open to some feedback. Everybody has some feedback they'd like to give them. And then participated with the Highway 14 Day on the Hill. I know Vance was up there for Transportation Day. I was there with what we call Fix 14 Now event, and we met with quite a few legislators up there and kind of got our message across, and it's pretty well supported that they would like to, you know, get 14 finished. It's been about a 50-year project, and it's taken that long to try to get that corridor between New Ulm and Rochester into 4 lanes. And then lastly, but not least, over this last weekend, my wife and I took a train, the Amtrak, to Chicago and celebrated our anniversary and Valentine's Day, and it was quite an experience. It had been quite a while since I'd ever ridden on a train, and so it takes about 8.5 hours to get to Chicago on the train from St. Paul. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
That's pretty good.
I have a short one, rather short, under the weather for a little bit. Then I have February 4th, our department heads, and then later we had our Partners for Affordable Housing, had our search committee for a new director. She's still going to be around, but she's not. She wants to spend a little more time with her grandkids.
Oh.
Yeah. So anyway, so we had to start that process, and getting the search committee and getting the process with recruitment going. So we're doing that. And like I said, then son was here with the new grandson and all that, so kept me busy.
Nice.
So that concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
I only have a couple things to add, other than what's already been mentioned. We had our interviews for our new extension secretary upstairs, or administrative assistant, excuse me. And we got one good candidate that got hired, and I think she'll do a great job as long as we can keep her in extensions and don't ratchet her back up through the county. But she's a very bright young lady, so I won't be surprised if she moves up into our system. At least the other two that we've lost from there are still inside our system, so that's the only thing we have going for us. We had 5 to interview, and they were all really good candidates. So, had a couple hearings or ditch public informational meetings on County Ditch 9. We got a big project over there, and $1.5 million to $2 million project. So, big project to do some heavy improvements over there and some major repairs. So,
How big a watershed is that?
2,100 acres, I believe.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So it just needs a lot of repair. It's got a good ditch on the end of it, but the infrastructure on the top side is just deteriorating and needs to be repaired. So I'll keep you posted. We're gonna have lots of meetings on that one because it is a complicated ditch with the open ditch and the lowlands and the highlands. So we'll have lots of public hearings on my end. So hopefully when we get to the board here, we'll have everything settled. It's gonna get a redetermination of benefits and everything. So it's gonna be a long process. So.
Where's the majority of that ditch then, is that?
It's over by Madison Lake, between Eagle Lake and Madison Lake, kind of off Highway 14 there. That's where the biggest part of the ditch is, comes by Highway 14 there, just east of Eagle Lake, then it runs all the way, almost all the way to Madison Lake, so.
Wow.
But it needs some repairs, and we've had some problems with it in the past, been doing a lot of repairs on it, so time to do something on it. We've already had 2 meetings, and we haven't, we've just discussed the options, so I would assume we'll have another 4 or 5 meetings before this thing's done. But again, I've been very clear with the group that, let's have these meetings so we're not all sitting in the boardroom trying to figure something out at the 11th hour, so.
Great idea.
Does that outlet go to the Seward River, or does it go to the Madison Lake?
Nope, it would, not to Madison Lake.
Does it? Okay.
No.
Just curious.
But if, I could certainly start sending you guys the notices. We can't have 3 of us there, but if one of you want to stop in to one of them. The meetings have been very cordial, so. I was also at department head, good discussion about the space study we got going on. I was up at Micah in St. Paul last week, a lot of things going up there. John Tuma got his new job with the
Public utilities.
Public utilities.
Commission.
So Ryan, is it Ryan from AMC?
Ryan Erdman.
Ryan Erdman? He's gonna be taking over and doing John's stuff right now, because he kinda handles that already, so that's kinda where we're at. So he was at the meeting, so
He's
he'll
not
kind of.
leaving AMC, is he?
No, when he was sitting there, I was wondering.
Yeah.
What are you doing here?
I think Micah is contracted with AMC to
To-
buy a little of Ryan's
time.
time.
Okay, that's
Oh,
a relief.
That makes some sense, because
Yeah, he mentioned your name a couple times, Will, so you must sit on a couple committees with them, so.
Yeah,
He's general government, or? what is
he's
he?
public safety.
Public safety. Yeah,
So
I saw
it's a
him
good
up there.
fit, but I just don't know, I mean, that's a lot of stuff to handle, I mean, between what John was doing, what he was doing, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was probably the most exciting news up there. At least we got someone to fill that gap. And I think it's appropriate to have him do it. I mean, he's already doing it for AMC, so. And I was at Mayors and Clerks, and yeah, the presentation Jonathan Zert gave was a very good presentation, and always fun to hear from Jonathan, so. That brings me up to date, Mr.
You
Chair.
represented us well then.
We did. We were on good
I
behavior.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yep.
All right. Well, I had a lot of the same stuff. Department head meeting on the 4th, a meeting with the Coalition Against Larger Trucks, met with Drew. On the 6th, I went to Pasta on the Pub on the 8th. It was a Benches, a Humane Society.
Oh, that's right.
thing. It was a very good pasta, and it goes to a good cause for the Humane Society here, Blue Earth and Nicollet County. I went to the flood mitigation meeting 16922 on the 9th up in St. Peter instead of coming here because I had stuff going on the next day, so I did that. But on the 10th, we had our annual Diversity Awards luncheon, and myself and Drew accepted another award for what Blue Earth County does to support the Diversity Board. And then we had our NACO legislative discussion with Jesse Byer and Bob. On the 11th, I had an agenda discussion with Bob. I had a Habitat Executive Board meeting, and then a community farm meeting that we had with Will and the group, and we have some very, very good people that on that group, and I'm pretty sure we'll have a pretty productive year for the community farm this year. On February 12th, in the morning, I had the Transportation Alliance Day at the Capitol. I met with Jack Considine, Clark Johnson, Julie Rosen, and Kathy Sharon. Talked about different issues that we have here in Blue Earth County and how we can get the state's help. In the afternoon, I had futures through AMC. I had some very interesting discussions. Coach Jerry Kill from the Minnesota Gophers spoke with us and talked about his life story and what he's looking for and how he coaches and actually helps mature some of his people.
That was interesting.
It was amazing. Then we had a discussion on DISC, which is a personal assessment tool used to improve work productivity, teamwork, and communication. It's something that AMC is coming out with to help the workforce understand each other and why we are like we are. And it's something that you'll probably hear a lot more of in the future. And we had a gal came and talked to us on dispute resolutions. The next day in futures, we had the president and CEO of the Wilder Foundation, which is a nonprofit community organization that helps children, families, and older adults in the greater St. Paul East Metro area through direct service programs. And our last speaker was a Chuck Derry, who is a co-founder of the Gender Violence Institute and the Minnesota Men's Action Network. And he spoke on sexual and domestic violence and whose problem it is. And obviously, it's everybody's problem. So, but there is a lot more to that, but that's my report. And I think we can get right to the deed grant.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. Draw your attention to item number 7 in your packet. There's a memo there. The Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development has approved an application for a contamination cleanup project grant. This grant will allow for the cleanup of the Brad's Auto Salvage property. You may recall that the county board supported an application for planning dollars previously, and then also supported this grant application to do the actual cleanup. The first round of cleanup grant applications was not successful, but a second round has now been funded by deed. And so we have 2 action items for the board this morning. The first is the acceptance of the State of Minnesota grant contract, which is awarded to Blue Earth County to act on behalf of the project developer, Dirt Merchant. We need to act as the fiscal agent and be the local jurisdiction overseeing this grant. And so, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I'd ask your support for this particular grant contract.
Suppose we have to do them kind of separate? Since we
Yes.
did I'll move the acceptance of the state of Minnesota grant contract.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any questions or concerns?
I just have one. After reading through all the language that was in the contract, and I'm sure I know the answer, but I just want to make sure. It calls for matching dollars, and the local matching dollars are from Dirt Merchant.
That's correct, or Commissioner Campbell. The grant is for a total of $309,000, but there is a 25% local match, and Dirt Merchant has indicated that they would supply that match, and that's why we have the second contract, is to pass on that responsibility. That is obviously a concern for the county in terms of if for some reason that match were not delivered, we might potentially be on the hook for that, but that's why we want the second contract to be in place so that we can enforce that.
Sounds like they've been working on it for a while now.
Well,
How long has that
yeah,
been?
they,
Been 9 months, 10 months, I don't know.
I got more time when they didn't, the first time didn't go work. Yeah.
The investigation grant was done a year and a half ago,
Oh, okay.
No.
so close to 2 years probably.
Closer to 2 years, so.
I'd say they're chomping at the bit to get
Yeah.
Any more, questions?
I don't have any questions.
All right, with that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? That one's passed.
Mr. Chair, then the second item is approval of a grant agreement between Blue Earth County and Dirt Merchant that establishes and defines the roles and responsibilities of Dirt Merchant following the acceptance of this grant contract with the state. So recommend approval of that contract.
I'll move that one.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Any questions? Conversation?
I'm okay. I think it's great to get it going.
All right.
Yep.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? That's passed. Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, and we'll see the building up in no time, right?
Well, get her done. Good job. We really appreciate what you folks are doing out there, and really helps Blue Earth County and the city of Mankato. Thank you. All right.
Mr. Chair, since we have a couple more minutes before our next item, maybe we'll do a couple of administrative items, starting with the county board minutes from February 3rd.
I'd move the minutes.
Second.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Passed. Go ahead with the bills.
I'll move the bills.
Second.
Okay. Any questions, concerns?
Yeah,
Drew?
Full list here.
Good.
Fire away.
See, there's a Vetters Wynant Attorneys Limited, and the attorney's fees are for the exact amount of $1,500.
That is our contract with various attorneys that work with the child protection area. We put them on retainer so that they'll process those cases to represent
Yeah,
the families.
It's a rotations, isn't it?
Yeah, we have 3
Yeah.
attorneys that we've set up in this contract, and now the court assigns those cases to those attorneys on a rotating basis.
and then there's a Braun Intertech Corp. It's a public works consultant bill for the $3,338. I'm just curious what project maybe they're working on, if you have a list of it.
It's listed as a hazmat inspection on the Trunk Highway 66 turnback.
Huh, okay. And then, Icon Construction, project, the Public Works, for $52,000.
That's the County Road 14 bridge project.
Okay, yeah. And then I saw we have a Minnesota Department of Employment, loan payment for $14,000.
That's the asbestos abatement loan on the former Nichols building. We have that agreement with Vine where,
Okay.
because we received the grant funds,
Yeah.
we passed them on to Vine to do that abatement. Vine pays us then, so
Oh, okay.
you don't see the corresponding revenue to offset that payment.
Okay, yeah,
that
I
we
remember that. Second week, the H&L Masabi. I'm assuming it's from someplace up north on the range for $13,000. It's some sort of other maintenance issue.
Those are carbide grader edges
Oh, yeah.
in the Public Works Department.
We talked about those too. And lastly, Westman Remodeling, waivered services for $20,000.
That was some remodeling work to create a wheelchair access for a client in the Human Services Department.
And those, since it's waivered services, are those federal dollars usually and state dollars combined?
Federal and state, yeah, it's a medical assistance waivered program. So
Okay.
it's a program that's administered. We have a pool of dollars available for those sorts of
Okay.
services.
Well, thanks a lot. That helps answer some of my questions.
Anybody else?
I had one in the first week, Chris Engineering, I think it was first week.
K or C?
Okay.
For 31,000?
Yeah.
And those are cutting edges in
Oh,
the
yeah.
Public Works Department.
None else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Pass. All right, now we can go into, IT. Charlie, you're up.
Morning, Charlie.
Morning, Charlie.
Morning. So today we're looking at renewing our Microsoft support agreements, support and licensing for all of the Microsoft software that is used in Blue Earth County. Some of you may recall the last time we did this, it's on a 3-year basis. So 3 years ago, we would have done the same renewal for the licenses and also for the ongoing support. So what this does is it covers all the Microsoft software that's used in Blue Earth County. So that would be all the desktop software, which would be the word processing software, Excel spreadsheet software, PowerPoint presentation software, and Microsoft Outlook email. So it would be all of that desktop software used by individual employees. And it also covers all of what we call the server software, which operates the big central servers that run a lot of the large, computer systems of the county, like the property tax system and the finance system and things like that. So because of this, there are actually 2 separate contracts, one for the desktop software and then one for the server software. So both contracts are being executed through the state of Minnesota's Microsoft contract. That contract is bid by the State Department of Administration, so they get the best possible deal. And then political subdivisions like cities and counties can buy under that contract and take advantage of the same discounts the state agencies are getting. So we get the discounted pricing that state agencies get, and we also get the same terms and conditions from Microsoft. So it's a pretty good deal for political subdivisions. So what we're bringing today then is part 1, which is for the desktop software, and part 2, which is for the server software. So I would call your attention to the memos that were in your packet. So we'll go to one that says part 1 of 2 for the desktop software. We kind of covered the top part of that memo, but the one thing I wanted to point out on here is that as part of this renewal and upgrade, there's some major productivity improvements that we're looking at as part of this particular renewal. As it shows there, we're going to upgrade from traditional Microsoft Office to what Microsoft calls Office 365. What that does is it gives a lot of mobile enhancements, a lot of collaboration enhancements, and a lot of web or cloud-based enhancements to traditional Microsoft Office that we are really looking to capitalize on here at Blue Earth County. So a lot of good things that come in addition to just the stuff that we're used to with traditional Office. The second thing that's pointed out in that memo is that currently there are a lot of Blue Earth County employees that do not have access to Microsoft Office on their desktop PCs. And we also found that there are a lot of Blue Earth County employees, well, not a lot, but there are a good number of employees that do not have county email at this point in time. That would include folks like the highway workers that are out at the rural shops. Would also include, some of the heavy equipment operators in highway. There's some other folks too that currently don't have Blue Earth County email. So as part of this upgrade, what we're doing, and as part of this renewal, what we're doing is we'll be extending licensing for Microsoft Office to virtually all county employees, and we'll be extending Blue Earth County email to virtually all employees as well. There's still a few folks that are kind of in doubt. We have some temporary and seasonal people that it just doesn't make sense to actually give them some of this software. But the vast majority of folks will now have both Office and Blue Earth County email. So, as it says on the memo there, we talked before that this is being purchased under the state of Minnesota contract. And what you're seeing down below is a 3-year total cost to Blue Earth County for that 3-year period. It's broken up into individual one-third, one-third, one-third payments. So we don't pay it all up front, but this is the total cost to the county. So our recommended vendor is Microsoft. They actually work through one of their value-added resellers called SHI. So this contract would be with Microsoft and SHI for a 3-year total cost of $281,112. And these expenses are budgeted in the IT capital budget. And so our request is that this contract with Microsoft and SHI be approved. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
We should be doing this one at a time, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, any questions?
I was just wondering, Charlie,
Sure.
you know, when you go out, and I'm sure you have to go out and do a, you know, in advance pretty much you're working on this thing, because you know it's coming up, you know.
Mhm.
So that 3rd year, you're probably out there communicating with somebody, whoever does the
Exactly.
contract. Just wondering, does it go by, does the cost break, is there like a cost break? I mean, like if you go up to a certain number of people and then all of a sudden you get kind of a break on it? Or is it just strictly go by the number of employees that you have that have an account, you know, with
Yeah,
each kind of a...
the price breaks are based kind of on volume discounts.
Yeah.
But because we're buying under the state of Minnesota contract, they pool all the purchases of all the different cities and counties and the state. So we're actually buying at the highest, you know, pool level, which gives the lowest possible price.
Yeah, so it would actually cost more if we went out by ourselves and tried to
Correct.
find somebody, it would cost more than, let's say, $100,000 a year to get this thing done.
I'm guessing it probably would
Probably.
be more than 100, yeah.
Yeah, okay, and then wondering if, since you say there's gonna be some more people now, which we were aware of it, we talked about it, I think,
Mhm.
having more people, with accounts that probably haven't had some before.
Right.
They'll be given some hardware then somewhere along the line.
Well, actually, a lot of...
Access is what I mean, if we're gonna pay for
Yeah.
them to have an account, would they have access to the?
A lot of people already have the hardware, it's just that we hadn't licensed Office for them.
Oh, okay.
Now, if we look at the folks that are out in the highway shops, obviously we'll need to get some equipment out there. There'll be probably 1 or 2 PCs for each shop. It won't be that obviously every person has their
Yeah.
own.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But really, right now, most people already have the hardware. It's just that they were not licensed for Office in the past.
Oh, okay.
Is this something that'll help the folks that have like their own private smartphones, that maybe they can get Microsoft email on those?
Correct.
That's separate.
Part of the mobile advantages of this allows us to actually put Office on smartphones or on iPads, actually up to 5 mobile devices per individual. And so, yeah, it does extend the benefits of all the Microsoft software to smartphones, iPads, PCs, that type of thing. It allows us to license multiple devices per person.
Wow. That'd be great.
I'd move approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further questions or concerns? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? That was passed. Let's
Okay,
go to
so
part
we'll take you
2
to
of
the
this.
second one. That once again up at the top, it says part 2 of 2. As I mentioned before, this is kind of the software that you don't see. It's the one that runs, it's the software that runs the big servers and the back office types of things, if you want to call it that. And so I think probably the same things apply. You know, if we're talking about a 3-year contract, we're talking about one-third, one-third, one-third payments that split it up over the 3-year period. Once again, being purchased under the state of Minnesota contract and through the same value-added reseller, SHI. So pretty much all of the stuff up at the top is the same. So we're recommending the contract with Microsoft SHI for a 3-year total of $64,847. Once again, this is also budgeted in the IT capital budget, and our request is for approval of the Microsoft SHI server software contract for the amount shown.
Now, Charlie, if, since we approved part 1, If we don't approve part 2, will part 1 work?
Not really.
I was wondering about that. He's got our hands tied now, so no discussion.
And literally in the past, they used to combine the two into just one chunk.
Yeah.
Because of some of the technicalities this time around, they had to split it into two, but you're right, it's essentially one effort, so to speak.
All right.
And that does bring up one.
wasn't it?
That does bring up one question though.
Sure.
And that, I mean, and it's serious, I mean, if we were ever to not contract with them, we would have to go for a whole new software functioning, throughout the entire, county.
Correct.
Because this is, I mean, it's kinda like they've got our feet anyway, because we have to do it almost, you can
And,
count
you know,
on it.
That's true, and that's why we want to make sure we get the absolute best possible deal by buying through the state contract.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
That's why the world is the way it is, and Bill Gates and Microsoft, and that's just.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move approval.
Second.
We have a
Yeah.
motion and a second. Do we have any further questions or concerns? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Passed. Thank you,
Thank you.
Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thanks, Charlie.
All right. Well, it looks like, let's do our ditch hearing. And then we'll go for a break after the ditch hearing.
Welcome, Craig.
Hey, Craig.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Today I have one item I would like to bring before the board. We have to set a date for the final improvement hearing for County Ditch 34. This is actually in Judson Township, kind of northeast of Lake Crystal. We've received the reports from the engineer and the viewers, so we're ready to go ahead and actually have them set the hearing date and have it. And we're recommending it to be March 31st at 9:30 a.m. here in the boardroom.
Move approval.
Second.
Any questions, concerns?
I was just got a comment and a question too. This process started several years ago,
Yes.
and, which is sometimes the case, I guess, with some of these ditch systems. And I know at the time, what's the engineering firm with Chuck Randall? INS, worked up all their reports, and they had a lot of, like recommendations that towards the end, what needs to be done before the final hearing. And, just wondering, have some of those things been done, like, trying to say, I made a note somewhere. It's, looking at the, all the other, state agencies.
Contacting the state agencies.
Yeah.
We have to submit all the information to different state agencies, including, especially the DNR specifically.
Yeah.
That has already been done. So state agencies, there's a new state law that requires us to actually actively look for ways to, other funds to put, like for wetland restoration projects and stuff, and yes, we've already done that.
Oh, okay. And then have they had time to give us any feedback?
Well, they have, by the statutes, says DNR has 30 days.
Okay.
And the 30 days will long be up before the 31st. They've already talked to DNR about that. They had actually given us preliminary approval on the plan back when we had the original, preliminary hearing, but that was 2 years ago. They actually have different staff now, so we've sent those same plans that was basically approved by the DNR 2 years ago onto the new staff.
Okay.
We haven't heard back yet, but the 30 days will be up long before our March 31st meeting.
Okay. And I went back and looked at it, and it looks like this is a fairly good-sized ditch system that goes into the Minneopa Creek.
Yes.
Basically, somewhere from
Yes.
between here and Lake Crystal, I would assume.
Yeah, part of the plan includes basically a retention basin at the bottom end of the system.
Yeah.
So during most rain events, the flow will be less than it is currently,
Wow.
even after the
Even
improvement.
though it's being increased in size.
It's being increased in size, but there's storage on the end to actually increase the peak flows.
Okay. And then I was wondering, you know, they come up with a cost estimate at the time, which was $1,736,900. And that's been 2 years. I'm just wondering,
That might
how do
change
you
it.
deal with that?
That'll be in the final report. And of
Oh.
course, yeah, that, again, that's still an estimate, but yeah, all that information will be part of the final report.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm glad it's taking so long actually, because that's an important ditch and it goes into the state park there.
Mhm.
And I know that, hasn't been improved for over 100 years, so,
Yep.
yeah.
Time to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion for approval?
I have a
already did it.
Oh, you got
We
one?
did it, yeah.
Okay.
Already did it.
Any more questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Thank
There
you.
you go.
Thanks, Craig.
All right, let's take a short break. All righty. We're back in session here. Lost all our audience.
Yeah.
They don't know how exciting this is, Phil. Come on up.
He does
Come on
know,
up.
he does know his place here, doesn't he?
It's the Phil and Jay Show.
When Human Services comes on board, the place just empties out.
They must be scared of us.
Apparently they are. Already back out, good?
Maybe that's it. They just know that they're gonna be showing up and they don't wanna be around.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I have several action items for your review and approval today. First section is on supportive housing, and there's 4 items under that section. The first 3 of those are really agreements that do not have fiscal components to them, and the first of those being what we refer to as FHPAP. It's Family Homelessness Prevention and Assistance Project. And it allows Blue Earth County to engage Minnesota Valley Action Council as the service administrator for that project over the next biennium. It is a renewal agreement, and the term of the agreement is July 1st through June 30th, 15 through June 30th of 2017.
How's that been going, Phil?
Really good. I think that there's a growing network of support, I think, between all the providers, and you'll see this kind of need to be interdependent on each other. And they're working on a front end that's more of a consolidated, centralized intake, too, for all of housing, which I think will really benefit and really requires us all to work together, which is a good thing. Second one is Wilder Research, and Blue Earth County is participating with Wilder to engage this homeless management information system, HMIS, which is coordinated by Wilder. It is a renewal agreement. There's no changes to the previous version, except there is an additional data sharing component, which is referred to as a business associate addendum, so that's included in this. There's no term for this agreement, but it can be reviewed by either party and updated as needed. And the next item also...
Would that be part of the Wilder Foundation? The one
Yes.
Okay, the Mako Hong, she's the president and CEO of
Right.
just an amazing story
She
that
is...
they
a
had, but that's,
right.
that's exciting that we're working with them.
Right.
Because they've done some amazing things up there in St. Paul and the East Metro area, and it's exciting with the homeless issues that we have here in Mankato and Blue Earth County. It's really exciting that we're working, so thank you on that.
Absolutely. My cow was actually part of Ramsey County in Human Services before she went to Wilder, so we know of her from those previous years as well.
Yeah, I can't pronounce some of those names.
Yeah.
But she's exciting to listen to and exciting to hear her story, is how she came over to the United States and what kind of things she went through. It's
Yeah.
and you listen to her, you'd think she was a second generation, but she's actually first generation. She actually came from there, and
Wow.
it's very interesting.
Great stories. Yeah.
You were good with her name, I thought. You pronounced her name well, I think.
I
Sounded
just,
good.
You just say it with confidence.
Yeah, you did.
That's it. If nobody else knows, you sound good.
The next item is Three Rivers Community Action, and this again is an agreement that is related to the prior one about HMIS, and it's really to allow us to engage Three Rivers as them serving as the local service administrator for that particular project, and so this is that interconnectivity that we were just discussing. They provide administrative support for the end users and produce reports for the Continuum of Care, which is the regional housing group that gets together on a regular basis. Again, the term of this agreement is open and may be periodically reviewed and updated as needed by either party. The next item under supportive housing is Partners for Affordable Housing. This is a support and recovery services support that the board is offering to Partners for Affordable Housing to support recovery services at Teresa House and Welcome Inn. This is going to be delivered by a particular staff case aide who's hired through Partners, and there is an amount of this contract for $15,000 annually, and it's a 2-year agreement from January 1st of 15 through December 31st of 16.
Can I mention something? And it's not just like a political hat thing, it's a thought that I know that we've talked about before, I just wanted to say something about it, is that I've been noticing there's a lot more talk in the community lately about supportive housing needs, including some workforce housing that's needed in our community. I know there's apartments going up all over the place. Apparently it's not gonna fill the niche that's needed. And so, I just wanna ask, you know, I know you meet with human service people, and they kind of have their hand on the pulse of what's going on with the county and the city. And you said that, I know I became aware of this group recently. It's a regional housing group that meets, I don't know if it's monthly or quarterly, but they get together, right? And they talk about some of the things going on in the community.
Yes.
And there's some people from the county that meet with them during that time,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I know like this thing here, this new thing, this supportive recovery services for affordable housing. And I know that there's so many mandates that we have as a county, and some of them we do try to pass off if we can to a local nonprofit that's good at what they do.
That's right.
You know, pass through or whatever it might be. So we've got like, you know, this Family Homeless Prevention and Assistance Project that Minnesota Valley Action Council has been doing for years, I think, in this community.
That's correct.
And a lot of community action groups do that one, right?
That's right.
I would just ask that that everybody keeps their eyes open for what is the best practices, you know, and that we try to support those like we have, like even with Vine over here.
Right.
You know, they fill a real big niche in our community that's needed, and if the county had to take that on, it would be a different story too.
Right.
And so Partners for Affordable Housing, whatever we can do to support them, because they've been here for a long time.
They have, yeah.
When you look at the 2 different areas they're working in.
Right.
What can we do though? I mean, sometimes we look to you
Right.
or Angie or somebody
Right.
to give us some direction. You know, like at our work sessions, we talk about that stuff. We look for ideas and look for ways to best spend our dollar, but yet to help the community.
Right.
And so there's other groups out there. I mean, I was just thinking about the immigrant situation in our community.
Right.
The at-risk people. They're turning away people at the Salvation Army all the time,
Right.
and at Partners for Affordable Housing. Some with children. Salvation Army, who's been in the business, you know, of this alternative housing, especially during the cold seasons, I think they couldn't afford to do the other side of the building for the women.
They tried, I know.
Is there something that, as a county, that we couldn't somehow get involved with that and help them, because they do a good job of it?
Right.
You know, I just was wondering if you could knock it around, Phil,
Sure.
and maybe with the board, you know, I don't mean to, it just hit me hard here when you were talking about these.
Yeah.
They're all packaged together here, made me think about,
Right.
philosophically, as a board and as a county, we kind of already have gone down that road of trying to support those who do the best job,
Right.
which is a good spending of the dollars, hopefully,
Yes.
if that's watched closely.
Yes.
but also does the best work in the community. And so if you could come up with a, I don't know, a list of things, well, solutions or some things that wouldn't be out of line.
Right.
Because that's what we're mandated to do, is to take care of the people. I just noticed on here, there's some burial costs. We're mandated to bury people
Absolutely.
if there's nobody here that can bury them.
That's right.
We're mandated to help people who are homeless regardless. And so I just think that if you can come up with some proposals, that
Sure.
maybe the board would entertain just talking about, learning more about, because we cover every
Yeah.
topic,
Yeah.
from the bridges to the
Absolutely.
human service needs, and I just masking that, I guess, as a
Sure.
commissioner, you could.
I hear you.
Makes perfect sense.
It does. Yeah, this is a good example of supporting agency that is right in the trench with us. We consider them a partner, as is their name indicates, but the complexities that I think are part of that request to really analyze and figure out where the gaps are is that we have, I think about a 1% vacancy rate in our community for affordable housing. And so because of the MSU and other things, that whenever there's an apartment that's considered affordable, it gets snapped up right away. And so when you have folks that are on that cusp, in that transition, are new to our community, coming through Teresa House or welcome in, how do they transition in the community and be able to afford to put, a full act together to support their family or themselves? And so that's part of this example. It's just one example of what you're talking about, and there's a lot of needs. And so there's two dimensions to that problem. One is trying to find an affordable option for people to live, and then a lot of these folks need wraparound supports. So this case aid is going to work with meeting with them individually and making sure that they're known, and say, what are your specific needs for your family? So it becomes much more, not structural or systemic, but much more individual to that family. And you need both of those. So it's supportive housing is really, you find the right affordable place, and then you wrap services around them. And so that service side is what we're really getting at here.
Because we wouldn't really want to get into the bricks and mortar. I mean, that would.
Well, if they all left town, we would have to, probably, wouldn't we? Because it's part of our requirement.
I think it's a big issue within the community regardless. I would agree with that, is that we have to find ways
Mr.
to-
Chair and Commissioner Campbell, I don't believe we're mandated to provide housing, but where we've determined value in providing support services is to impact those areas where we are mandated to provide service. So areas like detox and other supportive services that the county has a mandated responsibility to pay for are impacted if we can maintain affordable and appropriate housing for people in our community. So there's an impact.
I know what you're saying.
But when
Like
you
this.
say, are we mandated to provide the bricks and mortar?
Yeah.
I'm not aware that we are.
Huh. I just know the community health aspect
Yeah.
is, I think there's some federal
Right.
mandates that,
Right.
I don't know if it actually says housing in there, but
Yeah.
whatever it impacts their community, their health overall.
Right.
So if there's detriment
Right.
to their health, safety, and welfare. I thought we were mandated.
Right, you get into these different disciplines, and it's an interesting dialogue, because I think part of scale and scope of our community as we grow and more are a hub, some of these new realities come to us on a structural level. If you break it down to the individuals, as Bob is saying, I think we would be left with that individual to serve them, and if they're homeless and they have needs, that's our mission, clearly in human services, about the person. But our mission isn't, that I know of within our scope, to supply housing supports, the hardcore housing supports. So then you look to the city and Section 8 and other things that are all part of this network. And I think those are value added, but they're stretched. There's long waiting lists for Section 8.
Yeah.
We have issues, there's no doubt about that, because of our growth and our needs, there's no doubt.
Phil, do you have some ideas that you could write down and maybe get back to Commissioner Campbell with?
Sure, yeah.
Why don't we do that, and, that way we can continue this conversation, or we can continue what we're doing here, but Commissioner Campbell can get what he's looking for, and actually it would help Blue Earth County out. Would that work?
Yeah, that'd be really nice.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Next section is actually the initiative, the South Central Community-Based Initiative,
serving in adult mental health. And we have our grant that is up here, and this item is really just to accept those funds. So it's between Department of Human Services, Blue Earth County as a fiscal host for the 10-county initiative to accept the 2015 grant plan and award. This goes to staff, the crisis center, psychiatric services, clubhouses, and it's both in Blue Earth County, and it facilitates those resources throughout the 10-county region. This is a renewal grant. It was reduced by 11% previously. The new total amount is just under $5 million. The term is January 1st of 15 through December 31st of 15. The final action item is public health, child and teen checkup. This is an interesting one. You've seen this come before you recently. The truth is that they needed 3 signed contracts, and they weren't open to us doing another signature on another copy, and so they want 3 re-signed originals. So I'm bringing this back to the board just for that updated date and signature, so that we have 3 copies going to them. This did not change our funding, and it really is just a language change that they wanted, so it's a pretty straightforward item. That's it for the action items today.
I'll move approval of the action items.
Second.
All right. Any more questions or concerns? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? It's passed. Go ahead with your informational and discussion items there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have several things to look at. I'll probably move through these very quickly, and if any of the board wants to go into more depth, we're certainly more than willing to do that. The first slide is about the cost report that we get, and this is always a delayed report, so this is the 13 numbers that we get in late in 14 usually, so there is a lag in time, but it does serve as a very important tool because it gives us some very broad brush comparison for where we're at year over year, and also some comparison to the other counties. I did not copy all the counties, but I have all that available if anybody's interested in comparisons to other specific counties. I can certainly provide that information. First slide, you'll see Blue Earth County, number 7 on our just numerical number is 7. You'll see the total amount under costs and revenues, $117,678,000 is what pushes through, and that includes all of our pass-throughs. So you look at our operating budget, and then you look at the reality of our budget of how much resource, and including health care, goes through our county, and it's a big number. So really, that's the purpose of that particular slide. The next
Quick question.
Yes.
So when I saw that too, I was wondering, because I know our budget, the whole county is not 117 million.
Right.
So these are strictly, a lot of programs that just strictly pass through. I mean, they just pass through dollars.
Absolutely right, and of course, the biggest one you'll see at the $64 million healthcare, and so all the things we talk about with MNsure and some of the changes, it's historically always been true that it's a big driver, and as financial workers make look at applications and determine eligibility, that resource is represented in these figures. So it's really state dollars, but they pass through our system, yeah.
I might add that, we determine the eligibility for those support programs and healthcare programs, but the payments to either the recipients or to the providers are paid directly by the state to the recipients, and they're reflected in these numbers.
And that's why it's not reflected in our budget.
That's correct.
Okay.
If I read this right, it says for revenue, the county is $5,753,000. Is that what we pay?
That is the county share of the revenues, that's right. And we'll
Okay.
see another slide on that too, Commissioner, on a percentage breakout.
Okay.
This is total, so it includes all of that, but yes, that's accurate.
Okay.
And the next slide is really a trend analysis, and what we look for here, again, Blue Earth County number 7, as we look across, you'll see a 19% change to our overall revenue side, the purchase services and the aid that we receive. And then if you continue across on that same line, you'll see a 3% increase in admin costs. So that's always what we're hoping for, is that we're increasing in our overall services and the delivery of the aid that goes through our agency, but we try to keep our admin costs at a reasonable level. So I think those are good numbers for us.
It's amazing how it just consistently goes up in big steps. You know, 2010, 11, 12, big steps.
I might also add, just on the admin costs area, that admin definition is much broader than we typically think about in terms of administration. This is a federal definition, which includes our direct service social workers and eligibility workers. So administration is in a broad sense, not in kind of that back office function that you oftentimes think about.
Okay.
So the 3% looks really good then.
Yeah, I was
Start
gonna
pulling
say,
in all those other
that was,
pieces.
yeah, if that adds those in.
How do you put that together? Who does that? You used to do it, didn't you, Bob, or?
I did.
Who does that now? Because that's a lot of detail. They have to try to come up with a number, I would think.
It's part of the reporting system that's been established in the Human Services Department.
Oh,
And so there are monthly and quarterly reports that support these numbers.
Phil just keeps asking Bob.
Well, it's truly, I think both Angie and Tracy Hansen are the ones that do that work, and it really does take both their efforts. Bob used to do a lot of that himself, and so we've kind of had to retool ourselves a bit, and I think we're got our feet underneath us. It took a couple of years, to be honest.
After Bob left, you mean?
Yes, that's what I mean. Exactly.
Made such a mess of it.
That's what I
Is that
mean.
why? Not do everything that he had set up?
He certainly does, there's no doubt about that. And the truth is we benefit, you know, sometimes you get that base, that foundation. Setting up a report is a lot more difficult than running a report year after year once it's set up. And so, Bob, we still use a lot of those structural components that are part of our base. Appreciate that.
Okay.
The next slide is a little more involved, but it does break out, Mr. Chair, some of what you were talking about, the county portion. And so if you look at each column on this slide, you'll see our population, and this is a per capita ranking, so they you know, divide it by the number of people in our county, and so that's why that's an important statistic. And then the total cost per individual in our county is the next column. The aid and purchase cost, which was our previous slide, and percentage of that, the admin costs broken out, and then the county portion as discussed. And you'll see those across all those lines to a ranking, and they put us against the other counties in the state. And we've always been historically right in this area of kind of that 24th percentile, and it's close. I mean, it moves by a percentile or two at the most. And you'll see some of the counties with very strong tax bases, their per capita spending is less, and folks that have a real struggle with that, a lot of times without a lot of resources, you'll see some of these be dramatically different across the state. So we're looking for stability. We're looking for a decent split out of county costs, as you said, Mr. Chair. And again, these numbers have been pretty stable over many years for us.
Would it be wrong to say then, or right, that you could line us up and you look at us, there's 75% of the state is paying more.
That's right.
That's correct.
That's correct.
So does that mean we have more wiggle room where we should spend more, do you think? Or do you think that, I mean, you know, if you're looking at trends and things like that, I'm just saying,
Right.
I mean, it's just,
Well, it's certainly, you know, I think we take a certain pride in that previous trend line that you want your overall costs, not that you're taking a lot of percentage and pushing it into administration. Bob's comment about what is included in administration is a big point, but I think we want to make sure that we're tipped towards providing services. So that's one percentage indicator that I think we're good at. I think it really is a question for the board that you know, you could move these numbers by the spending decisions that we make and how much or little we put. You know, personally, I like that we're in that category. I think to be on the total extreme would cause me concern, that we have some conservative nature to how we do what we do. I think we try to practice smart is the way I would characterize this in my mind.
and I could tell by looking at this that some of it has to do with, what do you call it, you know, the data, population trends in general.
Right.
So if you've got a huge population, you still only have this much people that probably require the services.
Yes.
So the larger your population, probably the less dollars you're gonna pay per capita for your
Correct.
services. So that's a trend too.
That's a trend, and then
Right.
of course tax base is a huge issue, and our poverty rates, which are always considerably high,
is another force that goes into this formula. And so, you know, to end up here and realize that we have a lot of people in need in our community
Yeah.
is really the passion we have under the surface, under the numbers,
Yeah.
which is we want to make sure we're getting the services out to those people. And again, that we're practicing smart or wisely with the resources that we have accessible to us, both federal, state, and local, all three of those buckets.
And whereas it shows that larger populations do better, Hennepin County's not
Right,
doing better.
right. You see that reverse itself. That's a really good
Yeah,
point.
Hennepin
Yeah.
County is really on the lower end. I mean, they're 66,
Right.
which is, we're much better than they are, and, but they got the largest population in the state.
A lot of resources too, but it's an excellent point. And so that's why I think this report, year after year, it's one that when we get it, we're kind of always excited to see how that goes. And you can do some comparative analysis, as you suggest, because some of those rules don't fit for all. You're absolutely right, Commissioner.
And then Carver County's number one,
Yeah.
which is,
Right,
you know, right kind of
right.
in the middle there.
Yes, and the poverty, I mean, I'll keep saying that the poverty level is an indicator that I've become increasingly, you know, really tuned into, because if you go to a Carver County, their poverty rate is very low, and that is
Yeah.
part of what goes into this formula.
Yeah, they don't have a center, a metro center like we have here, Mankato,
That's
and
right. A
and
hub,
I'm sure Rochester has that same issues we have, and of course Hennepin County's got huge issues.
Absolutely.
With Minneapolis.
And I think if you were to probably do some sort of analysis, I mean, you usually worked with this maybe inside our county even, I don't know, but when you look at statistics, you know, and you look at the population trend,
Right,
24 probably puts us closer to the middle than you think,
yeah,
doesn't it? Or maybe even a little bit higher than the middle, because we still have 65,000 people,
right.
which
Oh,
is higher than most of the
oh,
counties in the state of
definitely.
Minnesota.
Definitely,
So 24 is still fairly high probably
right, right.
for need,
Yes,
You know, for
absolutely,
need.
yes,
I would think, I don't know.
definitely.
Anyway.
I'm going to keep moving. Licensing slide is next, and I'll just highlight a few off these slides to just kind of go through them, and again, just welcome any further comments or discussion by the board. On this slide, you'll see how many years the different providers are licensed. This licensing component includes child care, adult foster care providers, and child foster care providers. So those are the three categories, and they're all combined in this data set. You'll see the upper left pie that a lot of our providers have been doing this for more than 5 years, which I think is a good stability indicator. We're very appreciative of those that longevity, that institutional knowledge that comes with these providers. We consider it one of our highest level of assets in our county for services. The big graph at the bottom is really a result of the satisfaction survey that's always accessible to any of the licensed providers. And you'll see that if you include kind of the excellent, very good, and good level, you know, it's the lion's share of all of the feedback we received. There is some blip up in the licensing office staff prompt service, and that pressure is actually very intense on us right now. It is an area that even in this session where there's proposals out there to actually even cycle through reviews even more. Quality goes up, that's great, but it takes a lot more staff time if you're going to do annual reviews on all providers each year. And now they're also talking about even unlicensed providers, that maybe our mission would be to also go and do quality assurance checks on them. I, of course, appreciate the quality assurance mission, but we also, that really stretches our resources. In this case, some of the proposals could double the need for licensing. And we're right back to the table of staff and all of those things that we've been discussing of late. On the right column, I won't go through any of that, but there's some narrative just about how this all is. I think our response rate is the biggest concern I have, just that we received 23 surveys that push this data out of 340 licensed providers. I'd like to see that number go up, that we get a better sample size. But overall, those that did take the time to respond, I think we're overwhelmingly positive, which is good news.
Next slide is child care assistance, and it's a spreadsheet, and I would only draw the board's attention to the box on the bottom of that slide. It shows, this is actually a very good indicator, I think, over the years of the economy and how it hits our community. We have had many years through the down economy of waiting lists for child care assistance. And now you'll see that we were allocated over $1 million of assistance and actually only used somewhat less than 800,000. And so we do not have a waiting list. We have more allocation than we've actually needed. And that trend line has been pretty consistent about the overall economy. As the economy goes down, there's a lot of pressure that's put on child care assistance and people struggling finding work or well-paying work, and it pops these numbers way up to the point where we have a waiting list, so it's over 100%. And you'll see us at 73% of utilization at this point.
Can I ask you just how long it takes to establish that? You know, somebody comes here, they need help, how long does it take to establish, Phil, do you remember?
It does, for them to establish that they
Like
are
how-
eligible for this.
They go to a daycare center.
Yeah, and it
the daycare
does-
center has to get the paperwork with that person
Right.
filled out appropriately.
Right, it's usually a 30-day window that we work within. There are complexities as far as where they came from and do they establish residency, and so all of those things are taken as part of the eligibility on the front end. So that's what takes that time to make sure that they do qualify. Once they qualify, then yeah, it's usually pretty easy, but it's a 30-day window that we work within on that. So.
Smallest probably.
Yeah, oh yeah, and we outperform that. In fact, that was one thing that surfaced a couple of years ago, and I think our turnaround day average was about 9 days or so. So it was really good, yeah.
Wow.
I was very pleased by that because I think we had some concerns from the community that we were very slow in response, and actually we were turning things around well below the mandatory. I'm gonna look at these DTAX ones in aggregate. The first one is just DTAX monthly totals, which put our 2014 performance against the monthly budget, and then 2013 is also included on that slide. The next slide does the cost analysis by months, and it puts revenues against expenses. So we are able to recover some of the revenue through either third-party employers or a sliding fee scale that we administer. And you'll see those bullets underneath these graphs that expenses equal the amount paid to the DTAX vendor, so that's the full amount. Then DTAX seeks payment from the insurance carriers, and then we also apply our sliding fee and any other remaining fees that we might have. So there's kind of those three-step processes, and there's another graph here at the end that really shows those all together. The third slide just shows the overall budget against the reality of our expenses, and there is some trending upward again in DTAX, which is a concern, obviously. Sometimes it feels like we struggle to get ahead of that curve because it's hard to predict what all feeds that. We are going to be continuing to have direct talks with law enforcement just about options and creative thoughts, kind of like our housing discussion of are there other things we can do to stem some of that tide. And then this final slide, which is probably has the most utility, is the cost analysis. So you'll see the first bar graph of $464,000, which is the total cost, and then the breakout of our net county share, what we pay against the revenues collected. So that's kind of the full picture of those other slides.
That first slide, I know, I was looking at that, I was thinking, there probably really isn't a trend. It's like it's all over the place. One year it's low that month, the next year it's way up that month.
Yes.
So I mean, I don't know, it's kind of funny.
That is the nature of DTAX, Commissioner, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's hard to predict, and
I
it's hard to
mentioned
know.
enforcement guys, we got on the board here, could tell you it probably has to do with maybe when they have enforcement saturations, or who knows, or enough staff on working or not working.
So, there's so many factors. I mean, there are directed patrol activities that focus on certain areas, and there are social events that tend to bring more
Oh, that's true.
detox visits. There's so many factors. I don't think you can put your finger on any one of them. But
Next slide is about out-of-home placement, one that we talk about usually at least a couple times a year. Our year-end performance, I think it's kind of a bifurcated picture. The first half of the year was very strong if you look at 2014, January through really July, where if we were on that trend, we would have had a very, very tough year. And then it broke in the last really half of the year. Things got better and then much better. So we ended up over budget, which we historically have done compared to last year. We're about $150,000 over 2013, but we were glad that it did tide down in the second half of the year. And so overall, somewhat pleased with that performance. Compared to other counties, we continue to do very well when it comes to out-of-home placement overall. And then finally, children's mental health. This is a very straightforward slide. I don't have a lot of additional comments. Just to look at the average caseload, we've always been somewhat high, really across the board in our disciplines. We take some pride in that. We're at 23. That is on the very high end of, I think, manageable for us. But the DHS caseload target is 15, which I think is actually a little bit light. I think people, you know, if we were more in the 20 range, I think we'd be satisfied. But we've always been asking our staff to do a little more, and I think actually it's a good practice that I support. So.
Have you seen any changes since the governor's initiative?
In child protection?
Yeah, in child protection.
Yeah, child protection is really a big issue. I think part of the thing that we're really concerned about, Commissioner, is just the funding of it. So the ideas out there, working closer with law enforcement, the county attorney's office, certainly, again, something we feel could increase quality. But there's also the realities of the court system and how long it takes to push things through. And it is going to take some money. And we were disappointed that the governor didn't fund some of those recommendations from the subcommittee. And so we don't know if that story's done yet, if there'll be more negotiations, but it's a hot topic for us, and where that lands will be. I mean, there was some common ground that I think will easily improve. This attention will help us, but we also really want to fund some of those good ideas that are coming down the pike too. So.
Looks to me like there's some potential for a lot of hard work at the local level that would increase the number of people we would have doing that.
And that's the concern again, because that pressure is real. Again, we welcome quality, but quality often comes with a price. At least early on, it's kind of like what I said about some of the structure that Bob put in place. You can run off that structure for a while. If you rebase that structure and ask people to do more, it's going to take an awful lot of work to rebase that, and some money, especially on the front end.
I know I was reading articles, Kathy Sheridan, I think, was putting forward, wasn't she?
Right.
Bill related to this.
Yes.
And I would assume there was some kind of fiscal note attached to it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's not final, is it?
No. And I think that she's one that, because she's been so intricately involved, I think she will be pushing the governor to reconsider the idea of not funding some of those, because she's been elbow deep in a lot of that effort. And so it's by no means done yet. But we're hoping that there was maybe a better common ground to start. I think there's a lot of negotiations yet to be had, yeah. And that's all I have, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jay, what do you got for us?
Now for the better part,
Jay.
I mean.
Chair and Commissioners, can I make a brief statement?
We would love you to make a brief statement.
It's an honor of mine being elected chair of this committee. Even a person with a brain injury can lead this committee. I would like the board to make proper decisions to benefit the county in a cost-effective manner. Now my report. The Human Services Committee met February 12th, last Thursday. Our guest speaker was Annette Larson, the coordinator from the South Central Minnesota region. Spoke of MnDOT's mission with their Toward Zero Deaths program. MnDOT's mission is to create a culture for which traffic fatalities and serious injuries are no longer acceptable through education, engineering, enforcement, and emergency medical and trauma service. These efforts will be driven by data, best practices, and research. Under mental health, Emily, Phil, and have their last name.
I'm sorry, I don't even have it open, Jay.
Emily Rajewski was hired
There
to
it
fill the case management and clubhouse staff position. Hosanna Lutheran Church has started Journeys Care group on Tuesday nights. Through groups to various subjects such as depression, addiction, cancer support, divorce care, single parenting, grief, and children who hurt. The Mental Health Day on the Hill will be at the state capitol on March 12th. Bus transportation will be available. The 2015 Mental Health Task Force elected officials: Brian Guess is the chairperson, Jeannie DeMars is the vice chair, and Jennifer Lermo is the secretary. Now, under social services, the Min Choices Screening Assessment Tool was discussed. The number of assessments needed to be done have greatly increased. The 2015 Social Service elected their officials. Peter Bode is the chairperson, Susan Tuzenek is the vice chairperson, and the secretary is Emma Pfeiffer. The task force will continue to monitor the family room at the government center and periodically organize the cleaning of the room. Let me also mention, Susan Tuzenek was named vice chairman of this committee, so I'm chair, she's vice chair.
Okay, yeah, very good.
And Jay, if I could just add too, that there was some discussion about recruitment, so if any of the commissioners have anybody that you know of that might be interested, we really are at that point again where we'd be welcoming some new members. The youth members, we want to make sure that we represent them well, both at the high school and college level, and so.
Is there
kind of
open
excited about
seats?
that. Yeah, there's some open seats.
I mean,
and
for the
can-
youth?
Yes, and I can bring that back to maybe at a board report too, just to show where they are.
It'd be good
But,
to have that.
but if you have anyone that's interested, we wouldn't want to turn anyone away if there are some open slots.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, we have some, and we have somebody on our committee now that is a Gustavus college student that pretty connected with the high school still, and so he was going to do some recruiting for us as well.
Good.
Well, that's wonderful, and congratulations too, Jay, for
Thank
being
you.
elected chair.
That's important, as Phil was saying, it's important we get the youth involved, because, you know, they set stuff, because it's their future.
You bet. Yep.
Normally we get a report too, it wasn't in the packet though, was it?
We got an
No.
email later.
I
Yeah.
emailed it.
Oh, it did?
Over the weekend.
Okay, I haven't looked.
No,
Yeah, the meeting was Thursday and the packet was already out.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right, I saw it now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay, you do a great
Thanks,
job.
Jay. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Phil and Jay.
Thank you.
All right. Let's go back to some of the administrative services, Bob.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, item number 3 in your packet then is the Human Resources Department agenda. We just have informational items for you this morning. First is notice that we have filled a probation officer position. We also have received a resignation from our part-time 911 dispatcher, and so we initiated recruitment to refill that position. We had a promotion within the Human Services Department of a clerical specialist, and so we're beginning recruitment of a clerk 1 in that department. And then we had a resignation of our waste recycling technician in the Environmental Services Department. We have filled a clerical position in extension, as Commissioner Brunder mentioned earlier. And then we have one employee that we've extended probation in the Taxpayer Services Department as we work with that individual.
Okay.
Any questions on the agenda?
Nope.
All right. Item number 4 in your packet then is a request from the Soil and Water Conservation District. They have requested an additional community support grant from the county of $13,000. This would be for their 2015 budget. Currently they're having a budget shortfall that they've projected, and so they're requesting that we increase the community support allocation from $60,000 to $73,000. We have not budgeted for this increase in community support, but we do have an administrative account that could reallocate a portion of to cover this particular request if the board so wishes.
All right.
Also move.
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Any questions or concerns?
No, just a general comment, which you've heard from me before, and I know Will's aware of it too, but almost all the SWCDs in southern Minnesota, now I haven't gotten a report in the last year because we haven't had much of River Board meetings because the River Board is disbanded, but it would always come up every few months on how most SWCDs are underfunded by the county. They try to get a lot of grant dollars, which they do for projects on the ground, and those dollars are mandated for a certain amount of money. They can't use it for other things, you know, I mean, it's, what do you call it, I don't like using the term earmarked, but what's the term, Bob? Designated, thanks, Mark. Yeah, and so those funds are designated for purposes that they can't just pull when they need it for something else. So it doesn't surprise me that, you know, that they're asking for some funding. That's all.
Okay. Who are the commissioners on that committee?
Kip and I.
And, you know, normally when I see something like this and Bob got a hold of me, I really want to listen to the commissioners from the committee, and I want to hear your thoughts on whether we should go through with this or not.
They're doing a tremendous job, and this was something that was really unseen, not something that they could prepare for. Kind of caught them off guard, and so at the last meeting they were looking for ways to you know, how they could make up this deficit, and we're not funding the whole deficit. They're using some reserve funds of their own, and they asked us to support it, and they have an incredible staff out there, and they're doing work. They're doing very good work, and so I certainly support it.
And one thing I see in Blue Earth County is that we get along with our SWCD, and some counties don't. I mean, we have certain counties that they're at odds with each other, and that's certainly a difference. And I mean, I can certainly see supporting this, but I wanted to hear from you two first and find out what your thoughts were.
No, I would agree with Will also, but these guys are like an arm of our environmental services too. I mean, they work so close with our environmental services. I've talked to Scott about this organization, and I sit on the committee, and they do a lot of good things, and I think it just is beneficial to have them around, so.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate that.
And I'd echo that, because we've got more streams and rivers than many of our counties in Minnesota, and so it's amazing that we technically are only giving them, you know, $60,000 a year. It's pretty much a drop in the bucket for what probably could be going on out there right now.
Of all the committees I sit on, this is probably one I use the most, because Jared and his staff will help me a lot of times on some ditch projects we have going on, which is, you know, so that's just, I'm constantly asking.
So they help
Jared.
us as much as we help them.
Yeah. So between the ditches and what they do for environmental services and wetland issues that we have with planning and zoning, I rely on them guys a lot, actually. Jared
They
and his
really
staff.
go above and beyond.
Really appreciate that information. Any other questions or concerns? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? It's passed.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, item number 5 in your packet are a local option disaster abatement and credit application. This is a situation where there was a fire in a home in Lake Crystal in November of 2014. And so we're recommending approval of this abatement, which is 1/12 of the value reduction for 2014, resulting in a $98 credit in the 2014 taxes, and then a similar reduction for the 2015. That amount is yet to be determined, but pretty standard request.
Move approval.
Second.
Got a motion and second. Any questions or concerns? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Passed.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, item number 6 in your packet is the financial status report then for January 31st of this year. We're just in the first month of our fiscal year, so not a lot of activity to report. I would draw your attention to a couple of lines though on the report. The other financing sources and other financing uses show a considerable increase over the prior year. This really has to do with the $1.5 million that is being transferred from reserve to the Public Works Department for the County Road 12 right-of-way acquisition. So moving those dollars from a dedicated account to the Public Works Department to be used for that right-of-way acquisition. Other than that, you'll see that our revenues are at 3.7% of our estimated budget. Again, with the way property taxes come in, we will run behind our targets on the revenue side until May. On the expenditure side, we're just slightly under our budget target of 8.3%, with our total expenditures in January at 8%, so pretty much on target at this point. In terms of our cash balances, then you'll see that we utilized some of the available funds into the dedicated fund, primarily that ditch funding at the bottom of the page, the $9.7 million that remains there. That was that $10 million of reserves that were dedicated for ditch projects rather than using bonding as a way to pay for those projects. So overall, our cash balance is now at $98.8 million, down from $101.5 last year at the end of January. So I'd certainly be open to any other questions that the board might have.
I'm just assuming down the enterprise fund too, are we under that yet at all or not? I noticed their expenditures were other 326% up from the year before. So they must have had some expenses getting ready for some projects this year.
Right, that's the Ponderosa landfill, and so must have had some bills that came through in January of this year that didn't come through last year. But you know, on the total expenditures, we're at 171,000 compared to 144,000. So not some. There can be a lot of variance with only 1 month of data to work with.
Yep.
Is that it?
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right. Only other thing I have to mention is my thoughts and prayers go out to Eric Anderson's family. His mother passed away over this last weekend. I knew her personally from Lake Crystal. She was an amazing lady, and really feel for the family. Other than that, we have lunch at the Eagle's Nest. I will not be attending because my wife is speaking for an American Heart Association thing downtown, but everybody is invited.
Yep. Great.
And we're done.
So motion to recess.
Motion to recess.
I'll move to recess.
I'm sorry,
I'll move to recess.
Well, you didn't say we were adjourned though, you just said we're done. So
Yes, right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are
Thanks
recessed.
for coming, Mark.